Hey there! Did you know that this podcast has a supporters club? By becoming a supporter of the show, you can gain access to exclusive content and play an active role in helping the podcaster continue producing the content you love. See the link in the episode description for more details. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Welcome to the new Disruptors podcast. Here's your host, the wild man behind the mic, Bill. Today we're going to talk about insurance, medical insurance with Tony. And Tony, what's the difference between the different types of insurance and what should we be looking to purchase when we get ready for health insurance and decide what our needs are?
So there's two main types of insurance out there for medical. You have the HMO, which stands for Health Maintenance Organization. And to put a face on that, think of like Kaiser, for instance, okay? Which means simply that your insurance is Kaiser, your doctors, hospitals, and clinics you go to are Kaiser. It's all a vertically integrated, self-contained system, okay? And then there's the PPO, which is Preferred Provider Organization. So with an HMO, knowing that you have only your contracted providers that you can see, it's important to know that the primary care doctor, everything goes through the primary care doc. So if you want to get a referral, you got to get authorization from the primary care doctor. There's no exceptions. Under a PPO, so when you're making a decision, this is one of probably the most important things to take into consideration, because many times a lot of people, when they're switching plans, they enroll in a PPO. They don't always understand that the primary doctor is the gatekeeper. They are the ones that make the determination of you going to see a specialist or making sure that you get to a specialist. So always keep that in mind. And very simply what a PPO is that you have not only access to doctors in network, those doctors are basically contracted with the insurance carrier that you may want to go with. And because they're contracted, they're called in-network providers. So you pay lower costs, because when those doctors contract with the particular insurance carrier, they know what they're getting as far as, their fees paid and everything, what they're getting from the carrier and what they're getting from you as a patient. And then there's also out of network in the PPO, where you pay higher costs simply because the doctors, hospitals, and clinics may not contract with those particular insurance carriers, but they do give you the flexibility to look for providers outside of the network. But again, you will pay higher costs when you go out of network. And there may be situations where that might be necessary, a particular specialty that you might need covered, things like that. So I think those are the two main things that you're looking for. And then, like I've said in your prior podcast that we did, some of the things that you want to pay attention to very simply are, there's some plans out there that offer great benefits, but if your doctors, your hospitals, or your clinics are not contracted with them, then, those plans may not do you any good unless you're looking to move from your current carrier. You also have to look at particular medicines that you may be taking. You have to be aware too that different carriers may charge different copays, different co-insurance amounts for those medications. So sometimes one plan might have better cost coverage where you pay less versus another carrier. And a lot of that too includes, how they classify the medication. What might be a generic on one plan, maybe a brand, preferred brand drug on the other, and therefore if it's a preferred brand over a generic, you're going to pay more. So those are the things that you weigh out. Again, networks, where you want to go, how you want to get your coverage. You want to also look at your lifestyle too. There are people who are retired and may have time and they may travel. So, a PPO might be a better plan than an HMO. Say, for instance, you decided to, get an RV and you want to go see the United States. You may need flexibility when it comes to getting medical care. And so a PPO might work better than an HMO, because an HMO, being a specified network, it's only going to work in specific areas, maybe in the state that you bought it in. So if you go to another state, you might not get, you might not get coverage. But one thing that I have seen that's been really nice is that if there's an emergency, a lot of HMO plans will allow access to emergency rooms. But again, you may have to pay those costs. And I hope that makes a lot of sense. I dumped out a lot of information right off the bat.
Well, it gave us some good information. What would somebody do if they lose their job concerning health insurance? What's the first thing they should do?
So the first thing that they will likely want to look at is if they have specific health needs, like they may be in a treatment regimen or something like that. Usually a lot of companies offer their employees the opportunity to continue coverage through COBRA. And that is where basically you are paying not only your share of the premiums for that plan, but you also pick up the company's portion of that plan plus another 2%. And sometimes those COBRA costs, you may be only paying like maybe $100 or $200 a month to cover yourself and your family. But that's just your portion. When you look at what the employer pays on the other side of that as a benefit for you, it could be $600, $700, $800, over $1,000 in some cases, and maybe even more, depending on the carrier that they chose and who's getting coverage. So depending on where you are in terms of meeting your out-of-pocket maximums, meaning that you've paid up enough where if you still need continuing coverage, it might be worth paying the extra money, because now you may have met your out-of-pocket max and now the plan will cover your medical expenses 100% versus buying a whole new plan and starting over. Or if you're in a situation where you're relatively healthy, maybe young enough, have enough money, you can look at getting an individual plan or private coverage. And if you're not worried about meeting out-of-pocket maxes or having any kind of health situation, you might be able to just buy a new, get a new plan and basically start over. And it may be more affordable. But those are, a couple of things that I would look at, if I'm losing my job and I'm losing my benefits.
Another question that's asked a lot of is, what's the fastest way to avoid a surprise medical bill with insurance?
So the fastest way, and I always tell people this, is, talk it over with your doctor. And then I would call the insurance company and just discuss it with them and make sure that you understand what it is that, they're going to pay for their obligation and what you have to pay. Now, I'm trying to think of a specific example of this, but say, for instance, I know one, hospitals. So, for instance, I have a surgery, a major surgery coming up. Now, one thing that you want to make sure that you understand is, and this is where talking with the doctor comes in, is, are you going to classify me as an inpatient, where I'm actually probably going to have to stay in the hospital for a few days and recover after a surgery? Or is this going to be an outpatient? Or will it be an ambulatory surgery? So inpatient hospital stays are usually likely going to be more expensive, because once you have the surgery, and you got to pay those fees, those costs for that. You want to make sure that you're aware, and you also want to make sure that you understand how the plan is going to cover it and what your portion of that will be. So there are a lot of individual plans that may require you to meet a deductible first before they chip in and pay their share, which can range between like 60 to 80%, and then you get the remainder of that cost up to your plan's out-of-pocket max. So, for instance, I'm going in to have my gallbladder removed or something, right? And my plan has a deductible of, say, $3,000, and I haven't had any services to that point, then I've got to come up with $3,000. And then once that is met, then the plan will pay their portion. So depending on what the plan is that you got, they will then pay 60 to 80%, and then you pick up the remaining cost. So depending on how all of that's covered, it may be $3,000 to $5,000 that you have to pay out of pocket for that surgery. That's why I say the very first thing you want to know is with your doctor, hey, how are you classifying this particular, especially with surgeries and having stays in the hospital. And it's the same with outpatient, surgical procedures. You may have to meet a deductible or you may not, depending on the severity of what it is that you're having done. And ambulatory, that's where you go in, say 9 o'clock in the morning, they knock you out 2 hours later, do the surgery, you're done in an hour, and then after a 2-hour recovery period, you're out the same day. So sometimes you're not in a hospital, you're probably in an office complex where the provider has set up, an operating room, things like that, and they can do the surgery right there and take care of that. And it may be cheaper. Again, it just depends on what you got going on. Knee replacements, they're not going to wait for you to take a day or two. You're up and walking literally when you wake up. So, and a lot of those are classified as inpatient. So still, depending on the way the plan is built, you may have deductibles to meet, co-insurance that you have to pay up to a certain amount. It just depends. But yeah, talk to your doctor, find out how they're classifying it, and then if you don't understand your plan enough, I think it's a good idea to definitely talk with the insurance company, get a rep, have them pull everything up on their computers so they can see exactly or give you a very good approximation of what it's going to cost you out of pocket to pay for that surgery.
Now, usually, as you know, and being in the industry, every year we go through this open environment enrollment. I call it environment because it seems like they bombard you on major media. They bombard you on your cell phone. I mean, there's always somebody telling you got to check this because now there's another change coming up, and you might be missing something big and wonderful. What is the most common mistake people make during open environment in the enrollment world? Do you think, after all the years you've been selling insurance, what do you think is the biggest mistake they make?
I think we're all looking for what's going to save us money or give us the best benefits. I think at times we forget that what's important is our medical needs first, and with the environment we're in right now, inflation's high, things cost more. So if somebody's dangling that carrot in front of me saying, hey, not only can we cover this, but we also offer free yo-yos or whatever, or gym membership or food programs or whatever. If you have an agent, it's probably best to speak with that agent first, that person that knows you best. If you don't, and you see an 800 number on the phone or in your TV, if you call them, I would be very cautious, because in those environments, like you say, you only have a finite period of time to get signed up. You got to make a decision. And sometimes we don't have everything laid out in front of us and can be able to determine, what's best, because maybe a plan is offering great opportunities to get, a grocery plan or something like that, with, like you see with Medicare plans, right? But again, a lot of those are just danglers, because you may not necessarily qualify for that particular plan. You call in, they say, oh, well, you don't qualify for this, but, we got this over here. It really is best to make sure that you don't jump into something, because the plan that you may have already might serve your needs better. It may already provide you with the doctors, hospitals, and clinics. It may provide you with the best cost control. And sometimes people give that up without really thinking that all these plans are built the same. And then you just want that one little extra benefit. And then if it doesn't give you what you need, now what do you do? I had a client who was looking for cost relief on her premiums, and she didn't call me. I do my best to reach out to everybody during those enrollment periods, because when you have a lot of people, you're trying to get to everybody as much as you can, as quick as you can. But she called one of the 800 numbers. Person she got on the phone said, yeah, here's a plan in your area for $6.30 a month. Oh, wow, that sounds great. Okay, sign me up. So she did. And then after the enrollment window passed, she called me. I had said, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? She says, I think I made a mistake. And she explained what happened. And I kept saying $6.30. Well, where you live, there are no plans out there for $6.30. And turns out that the person on the other end of the phone, the rep, enrolled her in a prescription-only plan, and she lost all her medical benefits. So
that would be painful.
I mean, that. Oh yeah. And I've met another. My wife is also an agent with me, so we're a team. She got a call from a lady who was going to go in for a pretty important surgery. She got a call from an agent who happened to be in New York, and was explaining, she was looking for something to add on top of the medical plan that she had. And this particular person said, hey, I have what you need, it's through this particular company, and you can do da for you. And I think she explained the circumstances of what was going on and why she was hoping to get this particular extra benefit. And it turned out that the agent on the phone, enrolled her into a completely different medical plan. Not the extra benefit that she was hoping to get. And several days later, when she goes in to get her surgery, they say, hey, you canceled your insurance. We can't do the surgery for you. That was a mess. That one was a real mess.
That would be very disheartening.
So very. I think to some degree there's value in some of these 800 lines, but I would be very careful. I would, and I don't think I would jump into anything right away unless you verify exactly what it is that you're getting into. And sometimes we're able to rescue people and get them out of the situation that they may have ended up in, and sometimes not. And like in the case of this one lady, very sweet, very smart, but I think when you're so focused on looking at this one thing, you don't take in the whole picture of how does this really affect my coverage. I mean, you really have to nail it down. And if you don't have someone like your own agent They're looking out after you. Sometimes you miss those things. You choose something, you make a mistake, and you may be stuck. You may be stuck with that. So
Well,
just slow down. Make sure talk to somebody about it, preferably somebody in the industry who knows what's going on, and yeah, we'll help you.
well, it's a great picture you painted for us, Tony, and giving us the ideology of how to handle health insurance, because it is a very complicated thing depending upon your health requirements and your financial requirements and what programs are available. In the close of today's podcast, what's one message that you want the listeners to walk away with on this particular podcast today?
I think if one thing to say, it's just, because you're gonna get a lot of things dangled in front of you. You may think you might be missing out, and it's best to just kind of take your time and do your homework. If you've got somebody that you trust, an agent or a broker in your corner, it's best to talk to them and make sure that you yourself. I mean, you have to kind of be your own steward of your health insurance, but there's a lot of plans out there that look very similar. And like I said, I think if you're really dead set on having a particular provider, or what your budget is, and you have to make sure that whatever plan you get isn't going to charge you too much, it's best sometimes not to chase all these different little shiny objects thinking that everything's the same and you're going to get just a little bit better. I think it's just best to just be careful. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You're not dumb. I think the one thing that, we in this AI do-it-yourself environment is, I think sometimes we get a little overconfident. Oh, well, I can do this myself. And a lot of people can. There are a lot of very sharp people, but even the sharpest people get confused and sometimes don't know what the best option is. The owner of our brokerage, when he started, he met with a couple of surgeons, and he thought for sure he was way in over his head. And then when they sat down with him, they were saying, we don't know anything about, we just operate on people. We don't know anything about health insurance. So, help us. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with making sure that you are making, the best decision for you. And I think that would be my message. Just take a breath, weigh things out. And if you don't know anything, reach out to somebody who might have an answer for you. I love, a lot of people like the idea of AI, but I think having somebody with knowledge of the market is probably pretty important, and that talking to a human, and so they know what they're getting.
Very true indeed. How do we get a hold of you so we can talk insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am with a brokerage called the Medicare Exchange, located in Tacoma, Washington. You can reach me. My phone number is 253-226-7336, or you can reach me by email, which is talbert, TALBERT, @ASB, short for American Senior Benefits, .insure. So talbert@asb.insure. We don't use the .com, but we use the .insure. And also the phone number I gave is direct to my cell phone. So if anybody has any questions, you can reach me directly. I'm busy, so if I don't pick up, just leave a message, and I'm more than happy to get back with you and happy to discuss things with you.
Sounds great, Tony. We look forward to hearing more about medical insurance and how to make the right purchase for our family.
Thank you for allowing me to share.
soon.